New tonight, Governor Andy Beshear has ordered flags be lowered to half-staff starting tomorrow morning in Kentucky to honor the innocent lives lost in Israel. The country is now at war with Hamas. It comes after Hamas launched a surprise attack early Saturday. So far, more than 1,500 people have been killed. At least 900 are Israelis and nearly 700 are Palestinians. At least 11 U.S. citizens are confirmed dead as well, and an unknown number is still missing tonight. And tonight, WKYT's Jeremy Toms talked with a U.K. professor about the instability in the Middle East and the decades-long conflict that led up to this war. He joins us now with our top story at 10. Jeremy?
Yeah, Bill, Dr. Robert Farley has spent nearly 2 decades at UK's Patterson School teaching courses in security and diplomacy. To ask where this all began, he says, is an awfully large question, but he helped to summarize the modern history which has taken place over decades and a current situation which he is not optimistic about. Dr. Farley begins around the turn of the 20th century with heavy immigration into the area of then Palestine.
Later on, you get an independent Jewish state. There are several wars. Those wars result in the Jewish state coming to occupy 2 large regions. Those are the West Bank and the Gaza Strip.
Dr. Farley says in 2005, elections were held in both those regions, with radical Islamist group Hamas becoming the Palestinian Authority in Gaza.
Hamas is dedicated pretty strongly to the destruction of the Israeli state. Israel has undertaken a policy of basically isolating the Gaza Strip as much as possible. And that means a literal large wall around Gaza. It means a virtual wall along Gaza's seacoast.
He says that's led to conflicts in the years since, but nothing on this level.
Hamas has launched an attack of unprecedented scale in southern Israel.
As the attacks worsen and the death toll mounts, it's left people of all backgrounds in shock. And Dr. Farley says it's okay to be horrified by what's happening right now on both sides.
We don't have to say that the 2 sides are equivalent. It's a really complicated issue on both sides. There is justice on both sides. There is horror on both sides. And really, I mean, it's just an unfortunate and horrible situation for the people who have to live through it right now.
Diplomatically, Dr. Farley notes much of the response globally has been to show solidarity for Israel, but as they lead an offensive into Gaza in response, he anticipates that will change. He also points out this area is extremely densely populated and control over essential resources like food, water, and energy is in Israeli hands, meaning that there will be misery and bounds in the days and weeks to come.